Welcome to the Hytro Performance Podcast, and we're here today to talk all things performance, recovery, and BFR. Now, today we're joined by another incredible person from the Hytro community, Coach Mike G. So, Mike, for anyone unfamiliar, could you give us a quick kind of background on yourself and a bit of a version of your coaching journey and how it led to you working with pro athletes?
Absolutely. My name is Coach Mike Guevara. G stands for Guevara. So for everyone out there who didn't know, that's actually my last name. It's not G. Um,
Thanks for
I,
correcting. I appreciate it.
well, no, I mean, I'm known as Coach Mike G. So, but some people don't know my last name. But anyways, neither here nor there. Uh, Athletic performance coach. I've been doing this for a better part of 15 to 16 years. Who's counting these days, anyways? Long time. Straight out of college, I knew exactly what I wanted to do. Actually, in college, I knew what I wanted to do and got right to it. And, I think my journey aligns and parallels a lot with most or some of our performance coaches in our community. And, we all aspire to be pro athletes at one point in time, believe it or not. And I played football. I played American football, not soccer, but American football. And I am 5'8", 165 pounds, soaking wet. I'm also Asian. And for those who don't understand or follow the NFL, those measurables don't quite add up to your prototypical NFL wide receiver.
Uh-huh.
But within that journey of pursuing the dream of playing pro football, I earned a Division II football scholarship to play at Ferris State University, and I actually led my team in receiving yards both of my years that I was there. So I actually had a very proud career. So, something that I can really stand on and be super proud of. However, my pro dreams fell short. But the beauty about that, the silver lining about that, is that within my aspirations of just becoming the best football player I could be, the best wide receiver I could be, I fell in love with training. And this started, way back in eighth, ninth grade when I was even smaller and slower. And I knew I had to do something to equal the playing field or give myself an edge. And that was training. That was weightlifting. That was running. That was sprinting. I don't know if you guys remember those jump soles, those shoes with the big rubber pods on the forefoot, but basically it keeps your Achilles on stretch, and you're training your Achilles and you're training your calves, and you do all types of drills with them on, jumping them. And, they were really big back in the mid 90s. And I just tried to find every little nook and cranny of performance that I could on my own. Back then, there wasn't high performance training. It was just the internet was barely starting to mature. So the wealth of information that we all have access to now obviously was limited. We had to read books and we had to do things the old fashioned way. So that's kind of what led me into the performance coaching journey: strength and conditioning, speed and agility. And, as soon as I figured out that playing pro football wasn't going to be in my cards in my journey, I figured, hey, why not help kids just like me reach their dreams, get to their goals? And that's kind of the natural proposition that came from not making it into pro football. And I'll tell you what, that was the best thing that ever happened to me, because I haven't worked a day in my life ever since becoming a coach. And that's kind of how I got into the field. And then, I think luck is a big part of a lot of people's success, whether they want to, admit it or not. And I was lucky to be in LA during the beginning of my coaching career back in 2007, which puts you in the environment of so many people that could change your life. At the gym that I interned at, Victoria Azarenka, number five player in the world, tennis, walked into our gym and handpicked me. Why? Like, how could that ever happen in Colorado or North Dakota or Virginia. Like it's not going to happen. So being at the right place at the right time definitely served me well. But also, I was ready. I was prepared. I was ready for that moment. And sure enough, I became her performance coach full time, traveling the world, doing a bunch of really cool things that I probably had no business or was qualified to do at that time. But nonetheless, I made it happen. I captured that moment. And just over the course of the years, working with high school all the way to college, and then finally make my way into the pro ranks of just assisting, being an assistant, being a spotter, a towel guy, a program card holder, just doing the little things that I had no ego in doing because I knew I was there for a purpose, which was to be the best that I could be in whatever role that I was asked to be, because I knew that I would learn so much. And that was the key. And I learned and I soaked up all the information. And then sure enough, 15 years later, this is I want to say my 8th year working with NBA athletes, from working in the actual teams for, 2 to 3 years, and then actually traveling full time with players individually. This has been quite the journey, and I don't take any of it for granted. So
Mate, that was unbelievable and hugely inspirational for the listeners, I'm sure. And definitely not to the same degree, but there's some parity with my own journey making protein shakes and filling water bottles in, Premier League teams back in the day when I was interning. So yeah, it's super inspiring, buddy. And also just to hear you've always had that high performance mindset before, all the information and data was even available for people to understand what high performance was. You were acquiring that data, which put you in a good position for now. So really cool to hear. And I guess looking back over your professional career, so I guess over the past 5, 10, well, the last decade, really, what's changed the most, do you think, in the way that specifically basketball players are developed and prepared over this last kind of decade period? Because of course, basketball would be one of your primary sports, right?
yes, sir. So I would say that I'm best known in the basketball space for performance and athletic enhancement, if you will. And that's a great question. Within the last 5 years, so much have changed. But I think the landscape of performance training in the NBA, in basketball, we're still trying to change the culture. I think day by day, week by week, year by year, because 10 years ago, most players wanted to just play. That's how they got better. That's how they got their conditioning. And they felt that the performance of movement, athleticism, speed, all the qualities that you and I work very hard to develop in athletes came from playing. And it was very difficult to get athletes, especially NBA athletes, to train. And sometimes we still run into those barriers that it's just a difficult conversation to have because it's a cultural thing. You go into a high school football locker room or weight room, and they're getting after it because it's very cultural. And I say we because I played football, we know going into this sport, this is a part of it. We have lots of collisions. Strength is a big component of winning the physical battle on the field. So how do I develop that? I got to lift weights. Same thing with rugby, I'm sure. But basketball, not so much. It's very skill oriented. It's about technique and flow. And back then, the weight room was looked at probably as something that could hurt said skill. A lot of players believe that, and old school coaches believe that, lifting weights will mess with your jump shot. And I'll tell you a story, I'm very confident about this sharing this story. But I'm in the weight room with Drew Holiday. We're playing the Lakers. It's at the Staples Center back then. Now it's crypto, but we're at Staples Center. And Jerry West walks into the weight room. The logo, the guy on the logo. And he looks at us and he says, "Y'all got to stop doing this. This is messing with your guys' jump shot." And I was like very honored that he actually acknowledged what I was doing, even though he kind of, threw some shade on it a little bit. I was very happy about him acknowledging what we were doing because I'm like, that's the logo. But anyways, that kind of puts everything in a vacuum about, even 10 years ago, basketball is about skill, touch, finesse, even though it's a very physical game, extremely physical. You ever play pickup, you'll know that, you're going to be sore if it's a high level pickup game. And, just having these conversations of allowing athletes to adopt the mindset that the weight room is going to help me. It's going to give me a better opportunity to handle the demands, meaning stay healthy and robust and resilient, but also more movement freedom on the court. Now I have movement choice. I can do things that I never could do before because I'm strong enough, I'm stable enough, I have confidence, etc. I have no pain, right? Pain is a big limiting factor of why we don't try different moves. My knee's sore, so I'm not going to make that hard cut perhaps. Even subconsciously, we don't even think about it. Our brain knows like, I'm not going to let you do that. So the biggest change, to have a long winded way of answering that question, is we're starting to arrive. The culture of training is starting to change in our favor. You and I, the performance community, is that LeBron James goes on record and says $1.5 million a year on my body,
Yeah.
trainer, recovery, etc. And when you have the best player in the world, and perhaps of all time, depending on who you ask, not me, but depending on who you ask, this starts to get into people's minds and influence them and say, hey, maybe I should start taking this serious. And, a lot of times players come to me when when the bad thing has already happened.
Yeah.
I tore my ACL. Mike G, can you help me? I ruptured my Achilles. Mike G, can you help me? And these are true stories. Like, we don't need to wait until something bad happens before we start taking this serious. And this is the message that we're always trying to communicate to these athletes.
Yeah, again, super, super insightful. And if you've got any more anecdotal stories like that, that was incredible. So please drop as many in as you can today.
100%, 100%.
Yeah. Oh gosh, that was super interesting. So you've had a lot of success, right, in your career, clearly working with some of the best athletes in the NBA. How do you think, or why do you think you've had so much influence there? You've just said it is starting to swing in our favor as coaches, which is awesome, but it still feels like the NBA, kind of like rugby a little bit, is a little bit archaic in terms of, play first, train second. So how have you had success in influencing those behaviors? Because clearly you are successful, right?
Play first, train second. That is the best bar to explain our culture right now. Like, play, play, play. But so shout out to you for that. I'm gonna use that. I think the biggest influence that's had on my success, and I'll just be short and frank, is Drew Holiday. And for those who don't know who Drew Holiday is, he is a two-time NBA champ, two-time gold medalist, probably Hall of Famer, known as one of the best defenders, probably within the last 10 years, guard. And he's one of those guys that came to me kind of after the fact, like got started to get hurt, started to have stress reactions in his tibia, didn't really quite understand or want to understand the importance behind nutrition and sleep early in his career. Obviously, things started to break down. He couldn't be himself. He had no movement freedom or choice. And he ends up getting a surgical procedure done where they basically reinforce the shin bone, the tibia, with a titanium rod. It's very common. They basically say, all right, if you don't do this, you actually might have a full fracture of your shin. So maybe you might want to do this. And that's when he started to kind of turn over and start to believe in the training and the work, and what I do in the weight room is going to help me be a better version of myself on the court. And I'll tell you what, he asked me to be full time. I started early with him, again, assisting. He had another trainer, and I would assist that trainer. But we've always had a good relationship, through music, through fashion. I can relate to this younger age demographic. He was 20 years old at the time. I'm 31 or something like that. I'm not too much older than him, so we can have these conversations. Versus the trainer that he had was, they couldn't really, talk to each other like that. They just were two different, totally different people. But because we shared a lot of the same similar interests, we had these conversations, which turned into a coach athlete relationship. Furthermore, sometime later, he asked me to become full time, and um, he signed $300 million deals after that point up till now. And I'm not taking credit for that. I'm not saying that that's because of our training, but what I do know that is true is that he didn't get hurt as much. He was
Availability.
able to.
Best
He what's the best ability? He was able to be himself. His physical and defensive minded and strength style of play was further reinforced by the weight room, by our training, helped him be a better version of who he already was, and became all defensive team 5 times, all star, all these accolades, and $300 million deals later. So, to answer the question, that's what's become the main driver and influence behind my successes. What did Drew Holiday do? And who is that little Asian dude that he's been working with? Literally. And when you get stamped by a Drew Holiday who's beloved by his peers, coaches, the media, everyone loves Drew Holiday because he does everything the right way, and he plays basketball at a super high level. That's what starts to create the buzz behind my personal success. Is, man, maybe that dude has a little secret sauce or special sauce, and maybe I should go, figure that out. So I think that's definitely what helped me the most.
You should get a patent for that secret sauce, buddy. That's pretty powerful stuff.
Well, hey, we're trying to do something special with my
Yeah.
brand, GBG. We'll probably talk about that later, but
Oh
we'll see
yeah,
what happens.
we certainly will. I'm keen to delve into that a bit further, but just briefly on I guess load management. I guess so. You were talking about Drew and his steel rod or titanium rod, steel rod. Sorry, I
Titanium.
titanium. Right.
A foreign object was inserted into his leg.
That's what, yeah. So obviously this is due to a lot of loading, a lot of stress, a lot of jumping,
Yes.
decelerations, accelerations, etc. So I'm from getting into the NBA a little bit more over the past couple of years. I'm seeing the demands almost increasing from what I'm seeing on the court. Plus, on top of that, you have travel. You have so many tournaments, so many games each week. How is the structure of training around
Mm,
that changing in the current landscape? Because it just seems
mm,
brutal at the moment, the amount of minutes that they're putting into their bodies. Is that training, recovery,
yeah.
preparation, is that changing these days compared to before?
They they're trying to get a better handle on it. I think the good teams do it really well. Um, you have to have the luxury of managing minutes by having a deep bench. You know what I mean? Like, if you don't have, so what's the goal for the most part of these NBA teams? To win ball games. And if I want to win ball games, I need my best players on the floor. So sometimes that takes precedent over everything, regardless of said player perhaps may need to play 3 minutes less a game. And it doesn't sound like a lot, right? Like, 33 minutes per game versus 36 minutes per game is monumental load. And the average listener, or not average listener, apologize. The average person who doesn't really understand basketball is like, 3 minutes. Does that really make a difference? But if you take those 3 minutes over the course of an 82 game season, the load is unforgiving, and could be the difference between a major injury and not. So the NBA has so many different types of of imaging and tracking models and frameworks that look at acceleration, deceleration, distance traveled, etc. And the good teams take that data along with subjective information and history, previous information from said player, and creates a nice system that says, okay, maybe we should keep this athlete at 32 minutes or below.
Mm.
But then again, you have to have the athletes or the players behind you on the bench that can still give you an opportunity to win. So if I don't have those players, then maybe that system and that model in the heat of the game, it goes out the window because I need to win, right? As a coach, even though the trainer, the head trainer on my side, on my left, is saying, "Hey, coach, we want to try and keep this athlete at 32. He's at 34 right now. Hey, coach." And then that dude gets yelled at because it's like, get out of my ear. I'm trying to win this game. So it's a very slippery slope when it comes to load management. And then how about the behavior education that we try to implement into our athletes? Because that's a big part of it as well. Because if I'm burning the candle from both ends, playing 34 minutes, 36 minutes a game, eating poorly, lots of high processed foods and sugar, perhaps some alcohol because these are younger men, not sleeping as well and doing the recovery and the training that is needed to expedite recovery. Now we're in a very, very highly inflammatory environment that's going to just expedite this entire conversation into something bad. So again, you know, I think a lot of it has to do with culture, availability, as well as understanding how to communicate to these athletes. These are the things you have to do when you're not in front of me.
Yeah.
And that has a lot to do with just the soft skills of coaching and understanding social interaction and emotional intelligence, right? Like how do I speak to each individual player based off of who they are as people, where they come from, etc. And then, a lot of it has to do with, for me, how do I manage, because I'm a performance coach, I'm a strength coach, how do I manage the court load with what I do in the weight room and the strategies that I use to do so? And this is the Hytro Performance Podcast. BFR, blood flow restriction, has been a huge, huge ingredient in our ability to load athletes with a physiological stressor that isn't going to be as mechanically damaging as court load, as well as external weight load, but still gets a huge benefit in recovery as well as strength management and maintenance. So, just being able to be open-minded, right? I think some strength coaches get stuck in the hamster wheel of, I have to load our athletes. They have to touch 80% 1RM at least twice a week. They have to, there is no have to, there is no absolutes, because you have to understand that every athlete is different. Every athlete should have a say so. Like, how do you feel, Warren? That matters.
Yeah.
Mike G, I don't feel like lifting weights tonight because we do a lot of post game lifting. Well, I'm looking at the sheet. You just played 38. You know what? Are you okay with doing some BFR? Go put your shorts on. Actually, yes, I'm very okay with that. Okay, cool. I'm gonna meet you where you're at, right? And Hytro, the shorts allow us to do so because it's just a very convenient and easy and effective way to get what we need out of the session. It's not about what I want as a coach, it's about what you need as a player. So I think that just understanding that piece right there can be so powerful. And it's one of those things that will never be linear, because whenever you're working with humans and emotions, you never know what to expect. You know,
100%.
if Warren, if you had, just to put it in perspective, if you had a phenomenal game on the pitch, I don't know, what's a phenomenal game? Give me a stat line.
A start line scoring 2 tries in a rugby game.
2 tries.
Yeah.
And I said, hey, we got a post game lift. You're going to be like, hell yeah, let's get after it, right? You're going to be very motivated. You're going to be cool with that. But if you had a poor game, and I don't even know what a poor game would look like, but you didn't play well, and it was noticeable.
Mm.
And I said, hey, Warren, we got this lift that we talked about. What do you think? And your face is like, your body language says otherwise.
Yeah.
I'm probably not going to get a whole lot out of you, and now you're just ticking a box. So
Yeah.
what can I do strategy wise to say, okay, this is a waste of time. Let's do something that's actually going to be productive for both of us.
Yeah. I
I
love
know you're getting, you know what I'm saying? So like
I love
that has a lot to do with that for me as well. And that the load management thing is so curvilinear because of this moment,
Yeah, I love the statement you
So
made. Meet them where they're at. It's something that we use a lot internally at Hytro and externally because tool agnostic, methodology agnostic, literally, you need to meet the athlete where they're at and provide a service to support them in whatever they need. Like we are one of many tools. Yes, we are quite versatile and practical versus others, but we're still one of many tools. And you have to support that athlete in the way that they need. So yeah, that was really, really great insights again, buddy. And also great to hear that Hydra's been a hit with your athletes. That's good feedback on
man,
the podcast. So thank you. Thank you for
well,
that.
we're doing. Hey, I'm a firm believer in shit that works.
Chop that up, statement, testimonial. Thank you very much. Um, in terms of your philosophy on recovery, then we kind of just touched on it then, because some people think of it more of a science, some people think of it as more of an art. Where do you sit on that continuum for recovery specifically?
Oh my goodness.
And when I say art, I mean,
Yeah, I know what you mean. Yeah, kind of just for sure. It is an art. It is an art. Hell yeah, it is. Well, just to be honest and practical, I know that if we can do something good for the body and the mind, it's recovery. It's going to have a recovery effect. But there's everyone's baseline of where they're at is different. Okay, for instance, you could have an athlete that does everything the right way. Like he shows up on time, he does everything that you ask, he eats everything that you ask him to eat. You don't know if he's sleeping perfectly, but maybe he has a tracker of some sort and that looks good. So his scale of recovery is going to be completely different for the athlete that maybe does 50% of that, right? But this athlete that does everything perfect, the littlest input or lack of input will throw that off.
yeah,
You see what I'm saying? So now it's easier to understand like, okay, you slept 6 hours instead of 8 hours. You normally sleep 8 hours. That's probably why you feel like crap right now. Potentially. I mean, we can't say there's an absolute, but I'm confident enough to tell you that. Boom. Whereas the athlete that does things half the time, maybe one day he'll eat fried chicken. Maybe the next day he'll eat salmon. It happens all the time. Like you feel like you're starting to move the needle a little bit day by day by having these conversations and interactions, and all of a sudden you see him eating a bag of gummy bears, just like,
yeah,
and then you don't want to be the harping parental voice of like, bro, why are you eating those gummy bears? It's like it gets old, and now you're nagging, and it's just like, okay, I'm not going to be that. I'm not going to be the nagging trainer. I promise you, I will never ever be the nagging trainer. At this point, it's not about what you do; it's about what happens when you do it, right? That's what we're trying to implement. However, the person when that when that 50% starts to scale up to like 60 or 70%, okay, now I'm counting my wins. Um, Said athlete agrees to wear a sleep tracker. That's a huge win because
mm,
now I can create conversation behind information. Otherwise, because these people are smart, like they can smell BS from a mile away if you try to. So no, I'm not gonna BS my way into making you believe something. But these numbers are saying something, and if you're willing to face that music, because that's another thing is we put good and bad on recovery. So, for instance, some of these trackers have the red recovery. That's bad. Red is bad. So beware, right? And athletes don't like to fail. This high level, I don't like to fail in things. So now I feel a certain type of way about having this conversation because I failed at my sleeper recovery, which is a whole nother conversation in itself. But if that athlete is okay with facing the music and saying, no, 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 it's not about failing or successing. It's about understanding why we're wearing this tracker so that we can change our habits and behaviors to win, right? To feel better. Cool. Okay. Why did you wake up with a 40% recovery score? Let's look at your HRV. It's low. Okay. Did you eat late last night before you went to bed? Aha.
Mm.
That's why perhaps your HRV is low. So tonight, if you're cool with it, can you try to eat 3 hours before our targeted bedtime? Yeah. All right. Great. Boom. He does. Oh, we're in the green. Higher HRV. So now we have something to stand on in terms of our discussion.
Yeah.
So I think that being able to understand what type of player I have in front of me as far as what they believe in, what they understand, what they're willing to do, what they're, compliance is the biggest component. Let's talk about your nutrition. Do you believe that sugar will mess your sleep up? It's a poison. No, you don't. Why? I've been eating sugar my whole life and I dropped 30 and okay, next conversation. Do you believe that sleep is a huge component of performance? Yes, I do. Okay, now we can have this conversation. You see what I'm saying? So, I think that's the art and the science in one.
100%.
Because if you don't understand that you got to, again, meet athletes where they're at and stop saying, this is holy grail, this is what the science says, this is what you need to believe in. Nobody wants to hear that, especially 21, 22, 23-year-old kids who's been talked to like that their entire lives, right?
Yeah.
Where can I win at? Where can I as a coach have these conversations to at least start to get you to stop and think, oh, you know what? What Mike G was talking about makes a lot of sense. I think I can make that change or that adjustment. That's where I stand in the recovery conversation.
I'd be very similar. Anything that can support and drive behavior change, like the best recovery is the recovery that's done, right? If they're not doing anything,
Facts.
and something is better than nothing, and obviously that's on a scale, right? And being sports science in background, that was kind of what my PhD was in. There was a lot of evidence, still coming out around the benefits and detriment of ice baths, right? But if my athlete absolutely loves an ice bath post game, you bet your bottom dollar I'm going to send them to the ice bath because they feel better when they come out and the next day they feel less sore. Even if there could be a downregulation of MPS, which downregulates strength, I don't care. They feel better coming onto the court or the pitch the next day.
So
Cool, meet them where they're at. So, do you think, just based on kind of your knowledge of where the industry was and where it is now, do you think there's any overlooked, perhaps, or perhaps underrated recovery methods that you think more athletes and coaches should be using?
I think that there's so much information available. Okay, let me just start with this. Our community, our field, strength and conditioning, performance, it used to be, I want to say even 10 years ago, it used to be very segmented.
Mm.
You got your strength and conditioning coaches that are literally just weight room. You got your physical therapists, athletic trainers, physios, osteopaths that are just training room. You got your doctors that are just, medical and surgery. It's very siloed.
Yeah.
And there was little merging, right? Again, I'm speaking from my experience. Is this totally true? Probably not. But from my experience, we were siloed off and have very little collaboration. Yes, there was conversation, but like we didn't truly come together as one whole solid unit and put our brains together and come up with these strategies because I think a lot of it is like, I don't know, maybe ego, who knows, but it just didn't flow the way you would assume that it should. Now it does. Now these three elements are one. They have come together. They have more collaboration, which is a long way of saying I think that the information and the evolution of our field is starting to become more holistic. So I don't think that I think everyone knows everything under the sun. I think that, but I do think that people are often afraid or uninterested or disinterested in putting in new elements or new things, new strategies, tools, etc. Because if there's an adverse or bad reaction, that is immediately going to be blamed.
Yeah.
And in our field, nobody wants to be the scapegoat of a player having a bad reaction to anything. So they're going to stick to what they know and what they know has served them well.
Yeah.
This is what I notice. I'm not saying this is a truth. This is just what I observe. Whereas, somebody like me who's more of on the independent side and is more novel, I'm willing to try and look at newer research and later methods that have been discussed in the labs and brought to us in the field because I'm not a, I feel like I have that type of trust and freedom with the athlete, right? So like I'm okay with doing that. Now I'm not saying every little new bell and whistle I'm attracted to like a moth to a light and I'm getting it and I'm trying it. However, I'm open. I'm always open to learning and understanding new things. So but I do think that our field as a whole, there's so much information out there and it's so easily available. Like we know what's out there and we understand. We just kind of do what we know works
Mm.
and keep it simple like that, which I think is great. You don't need to change it. If it works, why change it? If it ain't broke, don't fix it. So um,
And you have an
it's
innovation mindset, right? You and other coaches that we work with, you're almost hand selected for that trait because you have an innovation mindset, which is what I believe attracted us to you and you to us in the first place. And if I may just dive very quickly into your introduction of BFR with some of your athletes, and
yeah,
particularly Hytro, what made you want to try it in the first place? Because I remember when we first met at a conference, you came and found me. You said, "Oh, it's the guy from Hytro." I was like, "Oh, you know who we are?" Like this is 2 years ago.
yeah,
Crazy to me. So yeah, what
yeah.
made you come across Hytro and want to try it in the first place?
Well, we talk about stories and anecdotes. I'll tell you a quick story about Drew, the athlete that inserted me into the NBA space, and um, it was the 2017 playoffs. The Pelicans just lost to the Warriors in the second round. Drew had a phenomenal season. He was all defense. He had the pleasure of chasing Steph around for 5 games. He played, I want to say 78 out of 82 games regular season and then the entire playoffs. And on the last game of the season, game five, the one we lost and finished the season, he played 48 minutes, which for those who don't know, that's the entire game. And we're on the table and we're doing our recovery, we're doing our cool down. And how do you feel? How the season's over? Like, how do you feel? And he looked at me and he says, like, I can keep going. He said, I feel like my legs have been the strongest they've ever been, and I feel really good. And he had just played 48 minutes chasing Steph Curry around, which is a monumental task. And that entire season was the foundational piece of equipment was BFR that we use in our lifts. Foundation. And from that point on, that's what inspired me as a firm advocate and believer of blood flow restriction. This is 2018. So at this time, blood flow restriction was mainly coveted in the rehab setting. Mainly, if you get hurt, this is a good tool to use to maintain muscle hypertrophy, maintain, all the good things that BFR does. But what drew me to that course initially, because I took a blood flow restriction course before that season in New York City, was a podcast. I don't remember the specific podcast, but this person was talking about how blood flow restriction was developed in Japan in the early 90s, and how a scientist basically rehabbed his knee twofold faster than the typical window of recovery. And that inspired me to think about post-game recovery. That inspired me because again, innovation, I'm just thinking okay, if this helped this guy rehab his knee from a torn ACL and twofold, what could it do for a healthy athlete?
Yeah.
This is just perfect logic. Why wouldn't we use it with healthy athletes?
100%.
Because obviously something's happening. There's some type of physiological something special. And sure enough, what are the demands that we constantly face in season? The game. If you're playing 2 to 3 matches or games a week, what athlete's going to want to load external weight, 50, 60, 70, 80% of max RM because they got to get ready for the next game. Most athletes, knowing the psychology of these basketball players, they don't want to lift weights if they were fresh from the first place. What are they going to want to do after a 40-minute game? So now I'm starting to understand okay, with this tool, be it blood flow restriction, now I can do 20 to 30% max RM, very light loads, and still get a huge physiological benefit from the hormone adaptation, right? The stressor from the hormones itself is going to be so influenced in recovery as well as performance. And that's the direction I decided to go with Drew for that season. I said, you know what? Let's just do BFR for all of our post-game lifts, all of our lifts, to preserve energy resource mentally, also physically. And it worked clearly it worked.
Yeah.
Clearly it worked.
And what then led you to Hytro then? Obviously, you've been across the BFR research and other products for years, and
Yeah.
I'm happy to state that you're using Hytro quite regularly with athletes. So yeah, what led you to that point?
Yeah, and the beauty about so um the gold standard, I put in air quotes because that's what's used in the research, uh you're tethered to a system, and there's even a little tripod that rolls around with you like an IV, and you don't have the ability to move around. It's very limiting, right? So I think one of the main attractions that led me to Hytro is the fact that it's extremely accessible. You know, I think the common theme of this conversation is just understanding soft skills of coach athlete interaction. And sometimes putting equipment on that takes 5 minutes to put on already turns them off to using the equipment.
Yeah.
So Hytro immediately removes that component. Now I can have athlete put shorts on, literally just put some shorts on, strap up, and that takes probably the better part of 20 seconds, if not less. So now I already have one barrier of entry removed. We can easily access this amazing physiological stressor in less than 20 seconds. Boom. When I came to you in the conference, I heard you on a podcast. That's how I knew who you were and what the company was, and had always been interested in the product because I understood the power of BFR. And once I started to learn about how the shorts give you the ability to simply strap up, I knew right then and there, like, this is something that I could easily implement into my program, into my training. Number two, the cuffs that most companies use simply are uncomfortable. Like, they limit movement because you have these super inflated, blood pressure cuffs around your upper thigh. And, quite honestly, you cannot bring your legs together, especially if you're a male, if you're a man. You just can't do it. If
Yep.
you could do it, it's going to be really painful and uncomfortable for those who know and understand what I'm saying, which limits certain movement option. At the end of the day, you don't ever want to be limited in your exercise choice or movement option, especially if you're training. Hytro does not do that. Now you have the free motion of if you didn't have the shorts on, and that was very attractive to me too. They just are so comfortable. Even when you're not strapped in, they're like compression shorts. They're very comfortable, and you could wear them all day, which I have.
Nice.
Now you can put them on before a long flight and do blood flow up in the air if you want to at a lower level, to get the blood flowing, get new blood into the system, etc. You could do them in the sauna. You could do them in the pool. You just have more ability to use blood flow restriction in areas and environments that you could never. So, and I know you guys are doing a lot of studying and research in those environments, which is very exciting. And then lastly, we talked about blood flow for rehab, but what about for training? And there's some studies out there that looked at taking elastic bands, which is their, unmeasured form of blood flow, and doing sprints with them and having huge performance enhancement with this stimulus. Well, now we have actual measured blood flow restriction with the Hytro shorts. And now we can do court work with the shorts and implement a degree of mental training as well. Blood flow restriction is a very uncomfortable stimulus that is not for the faint of heart. And if you're trying to introduce a component of mental training where athletes need to be able to perform high skill related movement, like in basketball, successfully with a mental stressor, Hytro shorts is the answer, because now you have to operate in a sense of extreme lower body fatigue or upper. I haven't played around with the shirt yet, but if you have the shorts on and you're trying to perform some sort of skill work on court, I'm 100% certain that this is going to build the ability to perform that skill on the court in the game when you're extremely fatigued. So, it just gives you so many more options to utilize BFR in a way that was never ever um, possible to do with other options.
I think we'll snip that whole thing and put it out as a marketing campaign. That was fantastic. Thanks. Thanks, Mike. I mean, what would you say to coaches or athletes who are kind of new to the technique, Hytro or otherwise, other devices? They're just curious about BFR and maybe hesitant to try it out. What should they consider first? Is there like an on-ramp that you think people should be looking at?
Well, I think all of our coaches in this field should train themselves. I think the biggest one of the biggest coaching compliance tools is you're able to perform everything that you're doing at a high level because now your athletes look at you in a different light.
Mm.
You know, when you make things look easy, athletes are way more willing to believe what you're saying. So for me, experiencing blood flow restriction was the onboarding for my mind to understand what's happening, but also the benefit that could instantly occur when you use this tool. One that wasn't mentioned that we should definitely talk about is the ability to remove pain symptoms almost immediately. Uh, I'm sure any pro athlete in the heat of their season, they're going to feel pain somewhere, whether it's their knees, their hips, their ankles, their shoulder, whatever, their lower. It's almost inevitable, which is a main driver of my decision to train or not. Like if I'm in pain, I'm not going to want to train. Let's do a quick 75-minute protocol, a 75 rep protocol with body weight squats, and instantaneously your knee pain goes away. Oh, and now we can train. What an amazing tool to have in your toolbox to again move the needle in the right direction. That's what happened to me. Blood flow restriction application, knee pain instantly gone, and now I can train really hard safely. So to answer your question, just simply trying the shorts, understanding how to apply, how we would apply at a lower barrier of entry, not so nuanced and doing court work and things of that nature. No, we can get into that. But how about let's just do our typical protocol of a 75 rep, 30, rest for 30, 15 reps, rest for 30, etc., and see how your legs feel.
I think,
Right? Like that for me was just the because it happens so quickly. It happens instantaneously. It's amazing. It's unbelievable. And I think that that's the easiest way for coaches to understand the power of this stimulus.
I mean, experiencing is believing, right? With BFR particularly, because as you said, the effects are acute. They impact you. And I think the other thing, the other key component from my perspective is education as well. You need to understand how to apply it, where to
Yes.
apply it, when to apply it. And I think that that leads us very nicely to our final question as well. So I'd like to bring GBG Hoops into this as an education platform, of which there's some Hydro BFR hosted on the platform. So what's getting you most excited right now, whether that's business, whether that's methodologies, tech, or rising talents in the game? What's getting your juices flowing at the moment?
Well, I'm a person of the moment, and right now my moment, aside from personal life,
Yeah.
is the NBA playoffs. And right now, this is evergreen. This is going to live forever. But this, at this current moment, this conversation was had. We're in the heat of the NBA playoffs, and I'm 1000% focused on that and the athlete that I serve in the playoffs. And the NBA game is all about glitz and glamour and offense and high flyers. But I'll tell you what, when the NBA playoffs start, all that kind of simmers down and it's about one possession at a time. It's physical. The referee's whistle gets a little more quiet, which means the body takes a brutal punishment and minutes go through the roof because, again, I need my best players on the court. And, not to continue to beat the listener over the head about BFR, but this is our main driver and tool of recovery because I know that I'm going to be able to get some good stimulus into the system to induce a recovery response. So I would just encourage everyone that's listening to this that first of all, you can train in season, you can train in the postseason. You just have to understand what tool can be used in application for the athlete that's willing to experience what you want them to. And for us, it is blood flow restriction. So I'm super hyper focused on that right now. How do I make every day some sort of positive movement and direction in the moment of recovery, and allow my athlete to perform at his best, when the lights turn on. So um, you know, this is really what it's about for me. I'm extremely passionate about just service and trying to be the best professional that I can be, whatever hat I need to wear, and supporting that. And yeah, that's really what this is about for me at this current moment.
Yeah, I mean, that really comes across on your social media presence and again with the GBG Hoops app and services that you provide athletes, pro, collegiate, high school. It's incredible to see what you're doing, Mike. So, congratulations on successes there, and may that ever continue when we continue to work together too. So yeah, I just want to say, just to round off, thank you so much for your time. It's always a pleasure. There's always new insights, new stories. I thoroughly enjoy chatting to you, buddy. So I can't wait till we link up next in LA or wherever it is in the world. So yeah, thanks for,
Absolutely.
and yeah, we'll connect very soon.
Well, I just want to say it's a pleasure to be on this podcast with you. The stories are always going to be available to you guys. I love to share, and it's an honor to represent basketball in the Hytro community. I want to make that a point before I leave, is that, you guys chose me to represent the beautiful sport, the worldwide sport of basketball, and within the performance Hytro community. And I don't take that lightly. I want to do anything and everything I can to provide value and insight there. So if you guys are interested in checking us out, go to gbghoops.com, and we're all over social media as well. So thank you so much.
Amazing, Mike. Thank you, dude, and we'll speak very soon. Cheers.
Cheers.